Morning Hatchers. Great to see you guys today. Today we are going to be finishing up Chapter 13 with Part 2 of Chapter 13. We did Part 1 yesterday, so if you haven't seen that, go ahead and go back to yesterday's email to see Part 1 of Chapter 13. So yesterday, we know that all of the residents of Sunset Towers are snowed into the building. We know that a bomb went off in the coffee shop, and we have suspicion that a bomb is going to go off again in the Chinese restaurant where everyone is eating right now. And remember, we left off, they were all sitting with different people. Grace Winsler Wexler was seating them with different people. So let's go ahead and finish that chapter up. Great to see you guys. Long before becoming a judge, Josie Joe Ford had decided to stop smiling. Smiling without good reason was demeaning. A serious face put the smiler on the defense. A rare smile put a nervous witness at ease. She now bestowed one of her rare smiles on the dressmaker. "I'm so glad we have this chance to become acquainted, Mrs. Boombuck. I had so little time to chat with my guests last night. It was a wonderful party." Flora Boombuck appeared even smaller and rounder than she was as she sat twisting her napkin with hands accustomed to being busy. Was her face permanently creased from years of pleasing customers, or was a tragedy lurking behind that grin? "Have you always specialized in wedding gowns?" "Mr. Boombuck and I had a shop for many years. Boombucks for the bride and groom. Perhaps you've heard of it?" "I'm afraid not." The judge would have said no in any case to keep her witness talking. "Perhaps you've heard of Flora's bridal gowns?" "That's what I called my shop after my husband left." "I don't know much about groom's clothes. They're mostly rentals anyway." Flora Boombuck lost her timidity. The judge let her chat away. "I'm using heirloom lace on a bodice of Angela's gown. It's been in my family for 3 generations. I wore it at my wedding, and I dreamed that someday I'd have a daughter who would wear it too. But Rosalie didn't come along until I was in my 40s, and..." The dressmaker stopped. Her lips tightened into an even wider grin. "Angela will make such a beautiful bride. Funny how she reminds me of her." "Angela reminds you of your daughter?" the judge asked. "Oh my, no. Angela reminds me of another young girl I made a wedding dress for, Violet Westing." The heavy charms on Seidel Pulaski's bracelet clinked and clunked as she raised a full fork and flourished it in a practiced ritual before aiming it at her open mouth. Chris's movements were even jerkier. She's a good person, he thought, but she thinks too much about herself. Maybe she never had anybody to love her. "Here, let me help you to some of this delicious sweet and sour ostrich." Their laughter drowned out the loud groan from another table, where Turtle sat alone, a transistor radio plugged in her ear. The stock market had dropped another 12 points. "I'm starved. Let's sit down to eat." Head held high, Grace Wexler led her husband across the restaurant. "All I want is a corned beef sandwich, not a guided tour." "Would you prefer to sit alone or with that young lady over there?" "I thought I was going to sit with you." "Please be seated," Grace replied. Mr. Who will take your order shortly." Jake snatched the menu from his wife and watched her glide, gracefully he had to admit, to the reservation's desk and whisper in Who's ear. "Jimmy," she calls him. "That's a fine kettle of fish," he exclaimed, then turned to his dinner companion. "Fine kettle of fish. I'm so hungry even that sounds good. And from the looks of this menu, that's probably what I'll get." "I'm okay," Turtle replied. The final prices of actively trading stocks tumbled in her ears. Mr. Who waddled over. "I recommend the striped bass." "See, what did I tell you? Kettle of fish." Turtle switched off the radio. She had heard enough bad news for one day. "How about spare ribs done to a crisp?" Who suggested, then he lowered his voice. "What's the point spread on the Packers game?" "See me later," Jake muttered. "Go ahead and tell him, Daddy," Turtle said. "I know you're a bookie." "Can you stand on your legs?" Seidel Pulaski asked. "Can you walk at all?" People never asked Chris those questions. They whispered them to his parents behind his back. No. "Why?" What better disguise for a thief or a murderer than a wheelchair? The perfect alibi. Chris enjoyed being taken for the criminal type. Now they really were friends. "When you me notes?" "What?" "Oh, redo my notes?" "Soon. Very soon." Seidel daintily touched the corners of her mouth with a napkin, pushed back her chair, and grabbed her polka dot crutch. That was a superb meal. I must give my compliments to the chef. She rose, knocking the chair to the floor, and clumped towards the kitchen door. Where is she going? Angela, starting up to help her partner, was distracted by shouting in the corridor. Hello in there! Anybody home? Through the restaurant door came a bundled and booted figure. He danced an elephantine jig, stomping snow on the carpet, flung a long woolen scarf from his neck, and yelled, Otis Amber is here, the roads are clear. That's when the bomb went off. Nobody move! Everybody stay where you are, Mr. Hu shouted as he rushed into the sizzling, crackling kitchen. Just a little mishap, Grace Wexler explained, taking her command post in the middle of the restaurant. Nothing to worry about. Eat up before your food gets cold. A cluster of red sparks hissed through the swinging kitchen door, kissed the ceiling, and rained shimmering shower down and around the petrified hostess. Fireflies of color faded into her honey blonde hair and scattered into ash at her feet. Nothing to worry about, she repeated hoarsely. Just celebrating the Chinese New Year, Otis Amber shouted, adding one of his he cackles. Mr. Hu leaned through the kitchen doorway, his shiny straight black hair, even shinier and straighter, plastered on his forehead. Water dribbling down his moon-shaped face. Call an ambulance. There's been a slight accident. Angela dashed past Mr. Hu into the kitchen. Jake Wexler made the emergency telephone call and sent Theo to the lobby to direct the ambulance attendants. Why are you standing there like a statue? Hu shouted at his son. You told everybody to stay where they were, Doug said. You're not everybody. Madame Hu tried to make the injured woman as comfortable as possible on the debris-strewn floor. Angela found the sequined spectacles, wiped off the wet crystalline mess, and placed them on her partner's nose. Don't look so worried, Angela. I'm all right. Seidel was in pain, but she wanted attention on her own terms, not as a hapless, foolish victim of fate. Looks like a fracture, an ambulance attendant said, feeling her right ankle. Careful how you lift her. The secretary suppressed a grunt. It was bad enough being drenched by the overhead sprinkler and draped with noodles. Now they were carrying her right past them all. Grace pulled Angela away from the stretcher. You can visit your friend in a few days. Angela, Seidel moaned. Tight or not, she wanted her partner at her side. Angela stood between her determined mother and her distraught partner, paralyzed by the burden of choice. Go with your friend, Angie Pie, Jake Wexler said. Other voices chimed in. Go with Pulaski. Grace realized she had lost. Perhaps you should go to the hospital. Angela, it's been so long since you've seen your Dr. D. She winked mischievously, but only Flora Boombox smiled back. The policeman and the fire inspector visited the scene, agreed that it was nothing more than a gas explosion. Good thing the sprinkler system worked, or Mr. Hu might have had a good fire. What kind of fire is a good fire? Hu wanted to know. And what about the burglaries? Grace Wexler asked. I'm with the bomb squad, the policeman explained. You'll have to call the robbery detail for that. And what about the coffee shop incident? Theo asked. Also a gas explosion. Jake Wexler asked about the odds of having 2 explosions in 2 days in the same building. Nothing unusual, the fireman replied, especially in weather like this. No ventilation, snow packed over the ducts. He instructed the tenants to air out their kitchens before lighting ovens. Mrs. Wexler turned up the heat in her apartment and kept the windows open for the next 3 days. She did not want anything blowing up during Angela's party. But the Wexler apartment was exactly where the bomber planned to set the next bomb. Okay, that is the end of chapter 13. So now, there's been 2 bombs exploded. I'm wondering if these bombs are being set by the same person who supposedly murdered Mr. Westing. They could be different people, but I have a suspicion it's the same. I want to know what you guys think too. Think about it. See you guys later.